Hello, everyone. I'm Brian Walker. Scott, do you think we're ready to start?
Yeah, I think we could go ahead. Yep.
Okay,
Take it
great.
away.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian Walker. I'm Chief Strategy Officer at Bloomreach. I'm joining you this morning from my home office in Seattle. You might be able to see in the background, it's a really beautiful morning here. We had a beautiful holiday weekend. I'm hoping you all also were able to enjoy a nice holiday weekend. I can say it was I think I've lost track of the number of days now in Seattle. We've been self-isolating and so forth. I think we're on number, I don't know, it's well over 40 now. Let's just put it that way. It's over a month now. We might be into our 6th week now. I'm sure many of you are also the same. Those of you who are only a few weeks into this, you settle into a new routine. The holiday weekend was a nice break though. And here in Seattle, like in our neighborhood, we did a artist walk. Um, our family also participated. Artists hanging their artwork out on their fences, um, and people with a map online and all kinds of things. Someone took the time to do a QR code and everything that linked to an online map, so people could find places to walk to. It created a really nice dynamic in the neighborhood. It was a nice thing to do, in addition to all of the Easter celebrations and so forth that people were having as families. So I hope you were also able to enjoy some good holiday activities this past weekend. Um, Want to dig right into the numbers. Why don't we go ahead and hit advance here? We don't need to see my bio. Okay. Another very strong week in e-commerce. Of course, we're tracking business across 300 large enterprise customers across North America and Europe, many of whom have multiple sites and brands and so forth. And what we see here, of course, is continued strength. Year-over-year numbers, which is of course what the line graphs reflect, show overall traffic, and both in terms of overall traffic and search traffic, very high, at sort of mid 60s year over year. Sales were a little softer, relatively speaking, still very high year over year at 42% overall sales, 33% higher in search sales. We'll get into a little bit of the specifics a little later here, but I think this certainly reflects the fact, especially in certain categories like grocery and general merchandise, people are coming online looking for specific products to disinfect and take care and clean. Of course, the same top contenders we've seen since the crisis began to unfold continue to drive a lot of that behavior. But certainly, overall, e-commerce in North America had a very strong week. In terms of UK and Europe, really a phenomenal week, with overall site traffic and overall sales in the mid 40s, almost 50% in terms of overall site traffic. Search traffic was remarkable at over 100% year over year lift, and search sales at 155% year over year lift, which is just remarkable. We'll get into some of the reasons why here next. Week over week, we see. Whoop, don't advance yet. Week over week, we see maybe in a sense some moderation in terms of a trend. We see certainly the search traffic in Europe was kind of a remarkable outlier, but you can see things starting to kind of plateau, potentially at a new normal for the spring. Obviously, as consumers in both North America, Europe, and the UK are leveraging these online channels, not just for their essential household and business needs, but also for discretionary spending as well. And certainly, speaking with a lot of my family over the weekend, who are sort of like one of my most immediate groups I can turn to for multiple generational views on how they're behaving. A number of my aunts and my mom and so forth talking about how they're doing a lot of apparel shopping. They're doing a lot of home related product shopping. They're kind of filling some time with sort of that shoppertainment that they might have done offline as well before shopping online. Almost all of them said, "Yeah, we're shopping more online than we've ever shopped before." and they're kind of enjoying it, even though they feel a little guilty when they buy something that isn't essential. And I think that that's a psychological reality for many consumers, not just in North America, but around the world at this time. Let's go ahead and move into the category segmentation views. And I know this is kind of a dense amount of information, but certainly the color coding kind of helps you understand week over week, comparing last week to last week, the week prior to that, okay, and year over year, comparing last week to the same week last year. Certainly with North America, we already talked about the regions, excuse me. Let's jump into the categories. Grocery, observing a slight slowdown in terms of traffic, but still an increase week over week. Um, this, I think, reflects maybe some return to in-stock items amongst grocers. But we see this incredible delta when we look year over year, especially jumps out at you with traffic, both in terms of overall traffic and search traffic, remarkably high. With sales modestly, relatively speaking, high. Still 68%, 64% year over year is just unbelievable. But at the same time, that reflects a delta between what consumers are looking for and what they're finding. And I think in grocery, it's not just that items may be out of stock, it's also a reflection of the fact that the delivery and pickup times are very hard to come by. Again, there's some research out that's sort of indicating the delta, but it's also very anecdotal. If you just talk to family and friends, you'll hear stories about people, and people are starting to gamify the system, right? They're reserving carts weeks in advance that they can then populate, kind of anticipating deliveries to come. But for many consumers coming online, they'll spend time trying to fill a basket only to have some frustration. I think this is kind of an interesting trend that could impact consumers' adoption of online grocery longer term if this continues, because I think this will just lead to lots of frustration. It's just kind of normal behavior for us as consumers. When this kind of thing happens, we're looking for alternatives. General merchandise also had a very strong week. We see some we'll get into the search terms here in a minute, but we see some interesting things driving that. I think the category that really stands out this past week, though, is certainly home and DIY. Tremendous growth both in terms of week over week and year over year. When we get into the search terms, we'll see that consumers are actively looking for items for their garden. They're looking for mulch, they're looking for compost, they're looking for sand and cement. Um, they're looking for grass seed, bulky items that we wouldn't normally associate with online. Of course, in some cases, they may be picking those items up. They may be also being delivered to their homes. I know that we've done that in our home as well. We have fortunately a fairly large vegetable garden, and of course we've been looking forward to getting that in the ground. We did that last week. And I think a lot of consumers are turning to that. That also reflects the very high growth in UK and European sales last week. This category, in addition to grocery, really drove that. In terms of home furnishing, a little bit of a slowdown week over week. That might be people adapting to in-home, like long-term stay-at-home, work from home. And last week, that category had a very strong week, also in anticipation for Easter. But the week over week trends kind of mask the fact that year over year we're still looking at some tremendous growth. Kind of shocking how strong some of these categories remain. And in that category, items like freezer and Easter and desk, along with things like easy weeknight meals, kind of drove a lot of what we saw there. Apparel is kind of treading water. I think what's kind of interesting here is we've got a very highly promotional period. So while traffic remains reasonably strong, overall sales is weaker. I think that's maybe a reflection of the fact that things are so promotional right now. So sales, and this is true as well in luxury, are lower because the price points are lower. And of course, this is a channel where apparel and luxury retailers and brands are looking to liquidate a lot of product. And so the price points are lower, and of course the margins are lower as well. And in many cases, apparel and luxury retailers don't necessarily have the easy opportunity to leverage their stores to fulfill from. So in some cases, they have inventory kind of locked up in their stores right now while they're trying to liquidate warehouse inventory. A lot of them are trying to think about what to do down the road. B2B, kind of on the surface of here, looks like it had a really tough week. But I think we need to recognize that the holiday weekend had a big impact on B2B. Certainly, the overall business cycle is having an impact, but Good Friday was dramatically lower than the week prior, reflecting the fact that people were sneaking out for a long weekend, and the holiday probably had a disproportionate impact on B2B. We do see some interesting things in terms of the search terms here. Why don't we go ahead and move on to that? I'm going to take a sip of water. Oh yeah, here's a view on in terms of a home, and you can just see how significant the growth was year over year, kind of illustrated there graphically. And it kind of reflects a trend now for a number of weeks, especially in home DIY. You can see starting March 15th to the 21st, a real general trend up in that category in particular. And home furnishing as well, with a bit more of a plateau or a slight dip week over week. Okay, in terms of search terms, certainly in grocery, we see in a number of categories really, grocery, general merchandise, and B2B. You continue to see products that are needed to maintain a safe environment and disinfect, continuing to dominate. Um, it's kind of interesting to see these products continue to struggle to kind of keep up as consumers look for disinfecting wipes and hand sanitizers. It's interesting also to see. Let's see, which category was it again? I think it was alcohol popping up in, was it home improvement? Where is that? I saw it earlier. You can see that consumers are starting to look at, oh, there it is, general merchandise, excuse me, alcohol there. That's also starting to probably reflect the fact that people are looking to make their own hand sanitizers, as well as perhaps fill some of their boredom with some cocktailing, as I might from time to time. The luxury category continues to be dominated by brands. You can even see consumers are using the term sale in conjunction with those brand names. And when you look at home improvement, as I said earlier, you can even see brand names reflecting, stain, like Cuprinol, for example, for decks. You can see mulch, fence paint, sand, cement, timber, grass seed, in addition to those same products that I spoke about just a moment ago. Home furnishing, Easter, freezer, desk, as well as cooking brands for cookware, really starting to dominate there, with bread maker sneaking into the top 10. And in B2B, still dominated primarily by those products to keep employees and customers safe, but also air compressor, pressure washer, toolbox, sneaking into the bottom of the top 10 there. So there's some consistency here. Even in the apparel category, we see a consistent set of search terms week over week. Look, as consumers naturally look for comfort in that category. It's kind of interesting to see how consistent the overall top 10 in each category um, have been driven. But certainly in the UK and the EU, you see the impact of the home improvement category on the overall UK and EU commerce results from last week, with those search terms in particular trending very high. I think we might have one more slide. Or are we about done for the week? I guess we're about done for the week. This week, we're not going to have Christine Lee on. We may have her on again next week to talk more about key things that our clients are looking to do short term. We just weren't able to do that this week with the holiday coming off the holiday weekend. But I hope this was informative. We're going to continue to do the call weekly. You can, of course, find all of our data that we're sharing here, in addition to some additional resources, some additional data from last week, as well as the previous week's reports at that URL you see on the screen there. Please reach out to us as well if you have questions, questions on what we're finding, our point of view, um, or how we might help you as a business. With that, I want to thank you very much for your time this week. Be well, be safe. I hope you can enjoy the great spring weather like we have here in Seattle. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.